CPI is tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. S&P rallied into the close right near the 200-day moving average. We need to go over CPI, what to look for tomorrow, what sectors are going to move. There's a lot to really cover here, so let's just jump right into it. To start, at the end of the day, we had huge buying volume, which I imagine either people are positioning themselves for tomorrow by trying to get flat or get some long exposure. The blue line is VWAP on the day, and if you look at this, once we got over that line, at first it was resistance, comes back by 11:30, we flipped it, and that was pretty much it all day long. We stayed above it, so we had net buyers. Tomorrow at 8:30, we're expecting the following. Core CPI 0.3 versus 0.2, which would be a raise. Year over year, we're looking at 5.7 versus 6. So you're starting to see a pattern here, hopefully, right? That they're saying the month over month is going to be a little higher, but the year over year is going to be lower. Then we focus in on the year over year, 6.5% versus 7.1. This would be one of the lowest readings we've had. And what they did this week was actually take consensus from 0.1 to 0.0, which is fascinating. This close to the number to make that kind of adjustment is pretty interesting. Now, the CPI index, a lot of people don't look at and they don't really rank it highly, but this shows the overall cost of everything. You see this 297.71 and you can see it's 296.70. So they're actually suggesting price of everything aggregate is going to drop. Now, if we just take a look and we start going through 2022 all the way through and we look at these numbers, 296, 296, 296, 298, and then we jump up right here to 297.7. But if you go through what they're suggesting, we have not had a lower low in a long period of time. So they're suggesting a massive turnaround tomorrow in the CPI index. Now, we're not looking for much. This is CPI in line form, but that 298.3 where we're currently sitting, if we just take a look at this, they're suggesting that we're going to drop, even though year over year is going to be up. This is from the AtlantaFed.org. What's fascinating about this is it shows sticky price CPI. Sticky price, think of things like rent, things that take a long time to turn around, and that is in the orange. See the orange line right here, and you can see how it's trading up. So the silver line is going to be the flexible CPI, and then core CPI is going to be so we can see from these peaks that obviously at this particular time to say that we've peaked is probably an understatement. We can see that very clearly up here and how we're coming down. So we know that CPI, or as the Atlanta Fed calls it, flexible CPI, has crude oil in it. Tomorrow's reading will be from December. If we take a look at November 1st on crude oil, and we simply take a look at where we closed on crude oil month over month in November for that reading, we were down 7.3% roughly in crude oil. Now, if we take a look at where we are now, you'll see that we're right in line, and then we recently closed right in line. So we're essentially flat crude oil month over month. We're in November, we were down about 7% crude oil. These are gasoline futures. If we take a look at from November to November, we can see clearly that you were down 7.3% month over month in gas. Now, where are we in December? From that close to the 30th, which is right here, we were actually up about 4% in gas for December. Now, obviously, this is a blended rate as you're coming across. So I'm just trying to give you an understanding that energy prices are actually higher than they were in November. If we look at the S&P, we can see this chop zone right in here, this 39.50, 39.70, how we acted. And we broke out at the end of the day. We closed right on the 200-day moving average. It is absolutely glaring. Two sectors will absolutely explode if this is a really good number. Number one is tech. You will see technology short covering probably like we haven't seen in months. And it will not just be one day, it will be incessant. So if we have overall good numbers, people are extremely short tech right now. Now, the two main names are Apple and Microsoft that make up 40% of that sector. You can see how Apple is hanging right in here today and how we look like if we could explode, we're easily going to get this 138. I think we go back to this DTL if we have good numbers. I'm not so sure it happens that fast, but we're definitely going to have a really good day if these CPI numbers come in right where they're suggesting that they're going to come in. Microsoft, take a look, see the undercut right here and then the rally. same thing. You're going to want to focus on tech, not just the large cap, but take a look at the semiconductor index. Look at where we closed. Look at the volume for the past 2 days. We closed above the 200-day moving average today. Now, any other day, I would be going long because of that, but not before CPI, because we just don't know, right? We really don't know. And you can see that we didn't have even of average volume. So that also would have been a turnoff. But if we look at this and we see these levels, we can see that every time you flipped over it, you at least had an initial push, retest, and pushed again, right? Pushed, came back, retest, pushed again. So there's still a trade here, whether or not it follows through or not. But if we take a look at some other underlying indicators, and let's just use a 55 SMA and really look at this and go, okay, well, when was the last time that we had this kind of angle pointing up on the 55? And bottom line is you haven't had this since it broke back here. So this is not something to forget about. This is not something to pretend did not happen. It's there. And it's not going to be negated just by one bad CPI number. The problem is that you don't want to be long ahead of this if you don't know what the number is going to be. And quite frankly, nobody knows. Now, if the market cracks, they will go after tech or anything tech related. I would take a look at something like this, which are solar. See how we tried to get over today and we were unable to. Caveat, I started a short position in this today. So I am short. So you can see your line right here. You tried to get over, you couldn't. At one point in the day, we had a perfect gravestone. Obviously, I need to close. We didn't get it, but that's still a pretty ugly bar. You undercut that tomorrow. I could see a test of this very quickly back down to this 160 level. So I like this as a short idea. If a bad CPI number. TGTX would be something I'd be watching tomorrow if we have a good number. You can see these patterns everywhere. So I will link at the end of this. There'll be a video linked in the back at 3 particular patterns to watch. They're perfect for what we're going through. These bullish hook reversals or bullish homing pigeons, get them down. 1, 2, 3, turn bar, and then that's it. Right now, I bought this a little bit higher and then I bought it again today when it broke out right above here and then just traded into these levels up here. But I was not there for the large portion of the move because I didn't really want to play games. But this is setting up. And if you take a look at the volume, you can see that the volume was still greater than the day before and the day before. So I do like this, and I do think these kinds of names can continue to push. Tesla is going to have a pretty wild day tomorrow. Now, you can see all the volume and how this kicked in, and you can see how we rallied, but let's look at this on the daily so that we get this. See all those dojis? Look at all those dojis. So dojis are signs of uncertainty, and we basically have a doji farm in here. It's crazy how many of them we have, and we're still unable to close above one particular level. The breakdown level, the time that we actually broke and took out a new low, we are unable to close above that 123.15. Until we can close above that, we have a real problem on our hands. You have to get above that. And tomorrow, that very well could happen. Now, this was something we did a trade on the long side today. Just remember this little pattern. Patterns replicate. That's why it's so important to understand them. See these little tweezers right here? Look at these little tweezers right here, right? They look like tweezers, hence it's called a tweezing pattern. It's a topping pattern. Tesla gets this a lot. This is on a 5-minute chart, and you can just see how we broke right here. So after buying the long, we scaled out on the way up. Then when we cracked, got out of more, and this left a stop on a piece for the break even, just in case it reversed. But the question is, what do you do now? Well, do not rule this out. Even as a proxy, do not rule this out. Okay. This is going to be vicious tomorrow. Okay. This will trade like the NASDAQ trades. People will use this because of the liquidity and the amount of options activity that they can trade in this. Consumer discretionary, retail. Retail will rip on good CPI. Why? Because it will take their pressure off of the consumer. The pressure comes off the consumer consumes. Amazon doesn't get any cleaner than this. This was the level we were watching today with a bunch of people do this in the Alpha Chasers community. I did not do this trade, but they nailed it right off that open, and it just absolutely ripped. Got right to that 93.46. That was the level we were watching today, and then we wanted to see how it acts. It's important to learn how to draw support and resistance. Doji, 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 flips. Resistance becomes what? Support, bonk, and rips. And then we knew where the next level was. So if you know where your next level is, then you know whether or not your stock has the potential to what? To continue to move, or if it's going to come into another resistance area. If you are unsure what stocks to look at, I would tell you to look at 3 different ETFs. Number one, TQQ. If TQQ just gets over that 55, you're going to wind up seeing it push. And there's very little to stop it here, which means there's very little to stop the NASDAQ. You can get up here fairly quickly and start working your way up. And this could be a pretty big mover over the course of the next week, dependent upon what happens tomorrow. We also have to watch QQ tomorrow. You're going to have to watch this and see how SQQ acts tomorrow. Okay. And we are closing what? Below the 200. This was something we had a really good trade on. And the link is in description to get the newsletter. But you can see we got in at 48.5. Then we moved the stop up. And then we were just trimming as the trade's working into resistance points, into the DTL. So we're constantly pulling money out because we all know that what happens with these 3X ETFs, they end in tears. And if you didn't have a system or process in place, you're not happy right now, right? And you're hoping tomorrow that it's a bad number, and we all know how that goes. So what you want to do is you want to watch this and see what happens. Now, could you reverse off of this? Absolutely. Charts are secondary to macroeconomics right now. It's really that simple. I would focus on these two. Now, if it's a good number tomorrow, I would suggest that you look at TNA, which is the 3X bull. You can see that we are already above the 55. SPXL is above the 55. This is from a previous trade. These are the ones I would focus on secondarily. The one that's going to move the most on good CPI is going to be TQQ because people are going to rush to cover their short position. Please comment on this video. Let me know if you like the fact that I spent time going over CPI so that you have a game plan tomorrow, what to look for, what to expect. I would make yourself a little cheat sheet so that you have it so when the numbers hit. We will be live tomorrow at 8:25 a.m. so that we are able to go through the numbers with everybody at 8:30. So we will be live and we will stay on for the first half hour through trading, through pre-market trading. To join the Alpha Chasers community, there is a link up here in the top right. I wish everybody massive success tomorrow. Have a great evening.